Lisa Martinez pressed her face against the shuttle window as Harmony Point came into view. The massive space station looked like a giant metal flower floating in the darkness of space. Its petals were actually different sections where alien species lived and worked together. She had never seen anything so beautiful or terrifying in her 19 years of life. The shuttle pilot, a blue-skinned creature with 4 arms, spoke in broken English. "First time at Academy, yes? You will like. Very good school. Very smart students." Lisa nodded and tried to smile. Her stomach felt like it was full of rocks. 6 months ago, she had been fixing broken tractors on her family's farm in Texas. Now she was about to become the first human ever to attend the Zentari Academy, the most important school in the galaxy. The selection process had been crazy. Every country on Earth had sent their smartest young people to compete. Lisa still could not believe she had won. She was good with machines and engines, but so were thousands of other people. Maybe the aliens had picked her because she was stubborn. Her mother always said Lisa never knew when to quit. The shuttle docked with a soft bump. Lisa grabbed her single bag and followed the pilot through a series of airlocks. The air smelled different here, like metal and something sweet she could not name. Gravity felt lighter than on Earth, making each step feel bouncy. The pilot led her through long hallways filled with the strangest sights she had ever seen. Creatures that looked like walking crystals moved past them, their bodies making soft chiming sounds. Others floated in the air, glowing like living stars. A group of what looked like giant slugs slid by, leaving no trail behind them. Many species. "Here," the pilot explained, noticing her stare. "Zentari, Luxians, Molari, hive minds, and others. All very smart. All very old civilizations. You will learn much." They stopped at a large desk where a creature that looked like a tall insect sat behind a computer screen. The creature's head turned toward them, and Lisa saw it had compound eyes like a fly. When it spoke, the words came out of a small device attached to its throat. "This is the human student," the creature said. Its voice was flat and emotionless. "Registration number 7841, species designation, Homo sapiens. Technological level, primitive. Expected performance, minimal." Lisa felt her cheeks get hot. "Excuse me, but I'm standing right here." The creature's head tilted. "Yes, you are. Here is your room assignment and class schedule. Meal times are listed. On the back, your designated seating area is clearly marked." It handed her a small tablet computer. Lisa looked at the screen and saw a map of the station. Her room was in a section marked Temporary Housing. Her classes were scattered across different areas. But what caught her attention was the dining hall map. It showed a large room with tables arranged in circles. At the center was a table marked Zentari Elite. Around it were other tables labeled with different species names. At the very edge, in a corner by itself, was a single table marked Primitive Species. "Wait," Lisa said. "Is this where I'm supposed to sit?" "Correct," the creature replied. "Seating arrangements reflect the natural order of species development and intelligence. You will find your position appropriate to your species' current level." The pilot who had brought her looked uncomfortable. "Is long walk to your room," he said quickly. "I show you way." As they walked through more hallways, Lisa felt anger building in her chest. She had worked her whole life to get here. She had beaten thousands of other humans to earn this spot, and they were treating her like some kind of animal. Her room was small but clean. It had a bed, a desk, and a window that looked out at the stars. The pilot helped her set down her bag. "Listen," he said quietly, looking around to make sure no one could hear them. "My species, we were like you once, new to galaxy, treated poorly. But we proved ourselves over time. You must be patient. Show them what humans can do." After he left, Lisa sat on her bed and looked at her class schedule. Engineering, biology, strategic studies, quantum mechanics, and something called Galactic History and Culture. The classes started tomorrow morning. she decided to explore the station and find the dining hall. The hallways were busy with students heading to dinner. Lisa followed the crowds and soon found herself in an enormous room with a domed ceiling that showed the stars outside. The seating arrangement was exactly like the map had shown. In the center, tall crystal creatures sat at elegant tables, their bodies catching the light and throwing rainbows across the walls. These had to be the Zentari. Around them, other species sat in groups. The floating light creatures hovered over their tables. The slug-like beings sat at tables that seemed to be made of some kind of living material. Lisa looked for her table and found it in the far corner. It was small, plain, and completely empty. As she walked toward it, conversations stopped. Hundreds of alien eyes followed her movement. She heard whispers in languages the translator in her ear could not understand. When she sat down, a small robot brought her a tray of food. The meal looked like regular vegetables and meat, though she was not sure what kind. As she ate, she noticed that no one else was sitting alone. Every other species had groups, friends, study partners. She was the only one eating by herself. A group of the floating light creatures drifted past her table. She heard one of them speak, and her translator picked up the words. "Look at it. So solid and heavy. How do they even think with those crude brains?" Another voice replied. "I heard their whole species is less than 1,000,000 years old, practically babies. It's amazing they even discovered fire." Lisa gripped her fork tighter but kept eating. She had dealt with bullies before. Farm life had taught her that some people would always try to make you feel small. The trick was not letting them see that it worked. But as she looked around the dining hall, seeing all the advanced technology and hearing conversations about science she could barely understand, she wondered what she had gotten herself into. These beings had been traveling between stars for millions of years. Their civilizations were older than human history. What could a farm girl from Texas possibly teach them? She finished her meal and returned to her room. Tomorrow, classes would start. Tomorrow, she would begin to find out if humans really belonged among the stars, or if she would spend the next year eating alone in the corner, being reminded every day that she was nothing more than a primitive curiosity. Lisa looked out her window at the vast emptiness of space and made herself a promise. She might be alone, and she might be treated like she was stupid, but she was not going to quit. Her mother had raised her better than that. If these aliens thought humans were primitive, she would just have to prove them wrong. She had no idea that by the end of 3 weeks, they would be afraid to sit near her. Lisa's first week at the academy taught her that there were many rules nobody had bothered to explain. She learned them the hard way, through embarrassment and confused stares from other students. On her second day, she tried to sit at a different table during lunch. It was closer to the center and had 3 empty chairs. The moment she sat down, the other students at the table simply picked up their trays and moved away without saying a word. Lisa sat alone at the new table for exactly 5 minutes before a floating Luxian approached her. "Student," the creature said, its voice like wind chimes in her translator. "You appear to be confused about proper social arrangements." "I'm sorry," Lisa said. "I just thought I could sit anywhere." Seating reflects natural order. Your species designation requires corner positioning. Please relocate appropriately. Lisa wanted to argue, but every eye in the dining hall was watching her. She picked up her tray and walked back to her corner table, her face burning with embarrassment. As she sat down, she heard what sounded like relieved sighs from around the room. The hierarchy was everywhere, not just in the dining hall. In the library, the best study areas near the windows were occupied by Zentari students. The Luxians took the floating study pods. Other species arranged themselves in between. Lisa found herself directed to a small table near the back, next to what appeared to be a maintenance closet. During her first biology class, Professor Keth, a tall Zentari with silver crystal formations growing from his shoulders, explained the seating arrangement to the mixed group of students. Class positions reflect species' cognitive capacity, he said, his voice creating musical tones. Zentari students will occupy front rows, Luxians and Molari in secondary positions, newer species toward the rear. Lisa found herself in the last row next to two students from species she had not seen before. One looked like a walking plant, the other resembled a small elephant with too many arms. They seemed as uncomfortable as she felt. This arrangement optimizes learning efficiency, Professor Keth continued. Advanced species can assist lesser developed minds when appropriate. The walking plant next to Lisa whispered, I have been here 2 years, still sitting in back. How long have your people been in space? Lisa whispered back. 3,000 years, the plant replied sadly. Lisa stared at him. If 3,000 years of space travel still put you in the back row, what hope did humanity have? Her engineering class was taught by Professor Vex, a member of the hive mind species. He looked like a giant mantis wearing a lab coat. The hive minds were known for their collective intelligence, where thousands of individual creatures shared thoughts and memories. Individual thinking is limitation, Professor Vex explained to the class. Hive consciousness allows perfect coordination, instant knowledge sharing, optimal problem solving. Solo minds make errors, have emotions, waste time on personal concerns. He looked directly at Lisa. Some species cling to individual consciousness despite its obvious flaws. This limits their potential significantly. Lisa raised her hand. Professor, doesn't individual thinking sometimes lead to creative solutions that group minds might miss? The classroom went completely silent. Several students turned to stare at her with what she was learning to recognize as shock. Professor Vex's large, compound eyes focused on her. Please elaborate, Student Martinez. Well, Lisa said, suddenly wishing she had kept her mouth shut. Sometimes when everyone thinks the same way, they all miss the same things. Individual minds might see problems differently and find new answers. Interesting hypothesis, Professor Vex replied. However, 10 million years of hive development suggests otherwise. Individual thinking creates chaos, conflict, and inefficiency. Your species will understand this when you evolve beyond primitive consciousness. After class, Lisa noticed that other students avoided walking near her in the hallways. When she tried to join a study group in the library, the Zentari student leading it politely explained that they were working at advanced levels that might be too challenging for newer species. The pattern repeated itself everywhere. In strategics studies, when she volunteered an answer about military tactics, the professor smiled condescendingly and said, An interesting perspective from a species still engaged in internal conflicts. Even the most basic social interactions had hidden rules. When she tried to start conversations with other students, they were polite but distant. They spoke slowly, using simple words, as if she might not understand complex ideas. When she demonstrated that she did understand, they seemed surprised and uncomfortable. Lisa realized that her very presence challenged assumptions these species had held for millions of years. They had built their entire society around the idea that some species were naturally superior to others. Humans were supposed to be grateful for the chance to learn from their betters, not ask questions or offer opinions. The corner table in the dining hall became her regular spot by default. Other students would glance at her sometimes, but nobody ever approached. She was like a museum exhibit, interesting to observe from a distance, but not something you interacted with. During her second week, Lisa overheard a conversation between two Luxian students floating near her table. The human creature appears more developed than initial projections suggested, one said. Still primitive, the other replied. Notice how it uses crude tools and linear thinking patterns. Fascinating from an evolutionary perspective, but hardly advanced. I observed it attempting to integrate socially. Quite presumptuous for such a young species. They lack proper understanding of natural hierarchies. Give them time. They will learn their appropriate place. Lisa kept eating her dinner and pretended not to hear them. But inside, anger was building. These beings talked about her like she was not even there, like she was some kind of animal that had wandered into their school. That night, she video called her parents back on Earth. The communication delay meant their conversation was awkward, but seeing familiar faces helped. "How are you doing, sweetheart?" her mother asked. "It's fine," Lisa lied. "Learning a lot." "Are you making friends?" Lisa looked around her empty room. "Still working on that part?" "Remember," her father said, "you're representing all of humanity up there. Show them what we're made of." After the call ended, Lisa stared out her window at the stars. She was representing humanity, but to what end? Every day made it clearer that these advanced species saw humans as barely intelligent animals. They were not mean about it, which somehow made it worse. They treated her with the same patient kindness someone might show to a clever pet. But Lisa had not come this far to be anyone's pet. She had work to do and classes to pass and something to prove. She might be sitting alone in the corner, but she was still here. She was still learning. And despite what they thought about primitive human thinking, she was starting to notice things about this perfect galactic civilization that maybe they had forgotten to question. Tomorrow was her first major assignment, in engineering class. Professor Vex had given them a complex problem involving energy conversion systems. The other students had already formed study groups and were sharing resources. Lisa would be working alone, as usual. But maybe that was not such a bad thing after all. The quantum engineering assignment sat on Lisa's desk like a puzzle made of nightmares. Professor Vex had presented it to the class with what she was beginning to recognize as his version of a smile. "This problem has remained unsolved for 3 centuries, he had announced. "It requires designing an energy conversion system that operates at perfect efficiency while maintaining stable output under paradoxical input conditions. The mathematics suggest it cannot exist, yet theoretical physics demands it must." Around the lecture hall, students from advanced species had nodded knowingly, as if they understood exactly what kind of impossible challenge this represented. Lisa had just written down the equations and tried not to look as confused as she felt. Now, sitting in her room with papers scattered everywhere, she was beginning to understand why this problem had stumped brilliant minds for 300 years. Every solution she tried led to contradictions. The energy requirements broke the laws of physics, but the system demands made those same laws necessary. She had been working for 6 hours straight when her stomach reminded her that dinner time had passed. Lisa gathered her papers and headed for the dining hall, hoping that eating something might help her brain work better. The dining hall was mostly empty now, just a few late students finishing their meals. Lisa got her tray and walked to her corner table, spreading her papers out next to her food. Maybe looking at the problem from a different angle would help. As she ate, she stared at the equations. The other students were approaching this like a math problem, trying to find elegant solutions that satisfied all the theoretical requirements. But what if it was not about elegance? What if it was about making something that actually worked? Lisa thought about the old tractor engines she used to fix back home. Half the time, they were held together with spare parts and creative engineering. They were not pretty, and they definitely were not elegant, but they ran. Sometimes the best solution was not the most sophisticated one. She started sketching a new design, ignoring half the theoretical constraints. Instead of trying to solve the paradox, she designed around it. If the system could not maintain perfect efficiency, what if it just maintained good enough efficiency? What if instead of one perfect component, she used 3 imperfect ones that backed each other up? By the time she finished eating, she had the rough outline of something that might actually work. It was ugly compared to the sophisticated approaches she had seen other students working on, but it solved the core problem. Instead of fighting the paradox, it embraced it. Lisa spent the next 3 days refining her design. She used principles she remembered from fixing farm equipment, treating the energy system like a stubborn engine that needed to be coaxed into working rather than forced into perfection. The morning the assignment was due, she watched her classmates submit their work. The Centauri students presented beautiful mathematical proofs that explained why the problem was unsolvable. The Luxians offered elegant theoretical frameworks that approached perfect solutions. The Molari had grown biological computers to model the energy flows. When Professor Vex called her name, Lisa walked to the front of the class with her simple tablet computer. Her design looked crude compared to the crystal displays and living models the other students had created. "Student Martinez," Professor Vex said, his compound eyes reflecting the light from her screen. "Please present your solution." Lisa connected her tablet to the classroom display. Her design appeared as a simple diagram that looked more like a machine schematic than advanced physics. "I could not solve the paradox," she began, and heard several students make dismissive sounds. "So I decided to work around it instead." She explained her design, pointing to the different components. "Instead of one perfect energy converter, I used 3 imperfect ones. When the paradox hits one system and makes it unstable, the other 2 compensate. It is not elegant, but it maintains stable output." The classroom was completely silent. Professor Vex studied her diagram for a long time, his head tilting at angles that would have broken a human neck. "This approach ignores fundamental theoretical constraints," he finally said. "Yes, sir," Lisa replied. "But does it work?" Professor Vex was quiet for another minute. Then he began running calculations on his own computer, testing her design against the original parameters. The other students watched nervously as numbers flowed across his screen. "Impossible," he muttered. Then louder, "This cannot function." But as his calculations continued, something strange happened. Lisa's crude design was not just working in the theoretical model, it was working well. Better than well, actually. It was solving the 300-year-old problem. "Student Martinez," Professor Vex said slowly, "your solution violates established engineering principles." "Yes, sir," Lisa said again. "But does it work?" More calculations, more silence. Finally, Professor Vex looked up at the class. "It works," he announced. Several students made sounds of disbelief. "Not only does it work, it exceeds minimum efficiency requirements by 12%. A Centauri student in the front row raised a crystalline hand. "Professor, how is this possible? Her approach is completely unrefined." "That," Professor Vex replied, "appears to be precisely why it succeeds." Lisa felt every eye in the classroom focused on her. The attention was not comfortable, but it was different from the dismissive look she had grown used to. This was something else, something that might have been respect, but felt more like confusion. After class, Professor Vex asked her to stay. "Behind. Student Martinez," he said when they were alone, "your solution troubles me." "Did I do something wrong?" "No. You did something right in a way that challenges fundamental assumptions about problem-solving methodology." He paused, studying her with those alien compound eyes. "Your species approaches problems very differently than other galactic civilizations." "Is that bad?" "I am not certain," Professor Vex replied honestly. "Hive minds value efficiency, coordination, and established procedures. Your approach was chaotic, individualistic, and ignored conventional wisdom. By all logic, it should have failed." But it did not fail. "No," he agreed. "It did not fail. This raises questions I am not equipped to answer." That evening in the dining hall, Lisa noticed changes in how other students looked at her. Instead of the usual dismissive glances, she caught them staring when they thought she was not looking. Conversations seemed to stop when she walked past tables she sat at, her corner table as usual, but now the empty space around her felt different. Before, it had felt like rejection. Now it felt like something else. Something that might have been wariness. A Luxian student drifted past her table, glowing more dimly than usual. Lisa heard it whisper to its companion, "How did the primitive solve what we could not?" "Perhaps," the other replied. "It did not understand that the problem was impossible." Lisa kept eating her dinner, but her mind was racing. For the first time since arriving at the academy, she had not just participated in class, she had succeeded in a way that surprised everyone, including herself. She thought about Professor Vex's words. Her approach had been chaotic and individualistic. She had ignored conventional wisdom and established procedures. In the advanced galactic civilization, those were apparently weaknesses. But what if they were not weaknesses at all? What if the things that made humans primitive were actually advantages that these advanced species had forgotten how to use? Lisa looked around the dining hall at all the sophisticated alien students, and for the first time she wondered if maybe they were the ones who were missing something important. She had 3 more assignments due this week. Time to find out if her success had been a lucky accident, or if there was something about human thinking that these advanced civilizations had never encountered before. Word about Lisa's engineering solution spread through the academy faster than she expected. By the next morning, professors from other departments were requesting copies of her work. Students she had never spoken to were suddenly aware of her existence. But awareness was not the same as acceptance. If anything, the attention made other students more uncomfortable around her. Dr. Yilla, the Malari professor who taught biosystems, approached Lisa after her quantum engineering class. "Student Martinez," the slug-like creature said, moving, closer on its muscular foot. "I have reviewed your recent work. I would like to present you with a special assignment." Lisa felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. "What kind of assignment?" "A problem my advanced students have been working on for the past semester. A genetic puzzle involving biological system failure in multi-species colonies." Dr. Yilla explained the situation. When different alien species tried to live together on the same planet, their biological systems sometimes interfered with each other in unexpected ways. Plants that were harmless to one species could be deadly to another. Bacteria that helped one species could destroy another. The advanced students had been trying to design biological filters that could protect everyone. "Their solutions are elegant," Dr. Yilla continued. "But they require enormous amounts of energy and constant maintenance. We need something more practical." Lisa accepted the assignment and spent that evening reviewing the previous solutions. The other students had approached it like a complex biological puzzle, trying to understand every interaction between different species biology. Their solutions involved sophisticated genetic modifications and artificial biological systems. But as Lisa studied the problem, she remembered something from her childhood on the farm. When her father wanted to protect crops from harmful insects, he did not try to eliminate every possible threat. Instead, he created barriers and backup systems. She started designing her solution like she was building a farm irrigation system. Instead of trying to create perfect biological compatibility, she designed multiple simple barriers that could be easily replaced when they failed. Instead of one complex filter, she used several cheap ones arranged in series. Her approach was crude compared to the sophisticated genetic engineering the other students were attempting. But it was also practical, reliable, and easy to maintain. When she presented her solution to Dr. Yilla the next week, the Malari professor spent a long time studying her diagrams. "This is very simple," Dr. Yilla said finally. "Yes," Lisa replied. "Is that wrong?" "No," Dr. Yilla said slowly. "But my advanced students have been working on this problem for months. They are some of the brightest biological engineers in the galaxy." "Maybe they are trying too hard to be clever," Lisa suggested. Dr. Yilla tested her solution using biological modeling systems. Like her engineering design, Lisa's approach worked. Not only did it work, it was more reliable and cost-effective than anything the advanced students had produced. "I do not understand," Dr. Yilla admitted. "Your solution ignores established biological engineering principles. It should not be superior to designs created by species with millions of years of genetic manipulation experience. Lisa was beginning to hear that phrase a lot. Should not be superior. But her solutions kept working anyway. Her success in biosystems led to another special assignment, this time from Commander Hex, who taught strategic studies. The Zentari military officer had a reputation for being impossible to impress. "I have heard interesting reports about your problem-solving methods," Commander Hex said during office hours. His crystal body flickered with patterns of light that, Lisa had learned, indicated serious thought. "I would like to test your strategic thinking." He presented her with a war game scenario. Two equally matched fleets were approaching each other in space. Each side had the same number of ships, the same technology, and the same defensive capabilities. The simulation had been run thousands of times by military academies across the galaxy, and it always ended in mutually assured destruction. The purpose is to demonstrate the futility of warfare between advanced civilizations, Commander Hex explained. When both sides possess equivalent technology, conflict becomes pointless. This is why the galaxy has enjoyed peace for millennia. Lisa studied the scenario for several days. The other students who had attempted it had tried to find technological advantages or superior tactics. They approached it like a chess game, looking for the perfect move that would guarantee victory. But Lisa approached it like a farm girl who had grown up hearing stories about her grandfather's military service. She ignored the assumption that both sides were honorable opponents following established rules of warfare. Instead of trying to win through superior tactics, she designed a strategy based on psychological warfare, misdirection, and accepting heavy losses in exchange for strategic advantages. Her plan involved sacrificing part of her fleet to create confusion, then using unconventional attacks that violated standard military protocols. When she presented her strategy to Commander Hex, the Zentari officer's light patterns changed to configurations Lisa had never seen before. "This approach is barbaric," he said. "Does it work?" Lisa asked. Commander Hex ran her strategy through the simulation. Lisa's fleet won decisively, but at enormous cost. Half her ships were destroyed, and her tactics would have been considered war crimes by galactic standards. "Student Martinez," Commander Hex said carefully, "your strategy assumes that acceptable losses include scenarios that other civilizations would consider unthinkable. Sometimes you have to be willing to lose more than the other side to win," Lisa replied. "That is a very disturbing philosophy. But does it work?" Commander Hex was quiet for a long time. "Yes," he finally admitted. "It works. It works in ways that challenge fundamental assumptions about civilized warfare." By the end of her third week, Lisa's reputation had evolved into something she had not expected. Professors continued to give her special assignments, but their attitudes toward her had changed. They no longer treated her like a primitive student who needed special help. Instead, they seemed to be studying her, trying to understand something they found deeply unsettling. In the dining hall, her corner table had become a kind of no man's land. Students actively avoided the entire area around her. When she walked through the hallways, conversations stopped. Not because people were being rude, but because they seemed genuinely nervous about her presence. Lisa realized that she was no longer being excluded because she was considered inferior. She was being isolated because other students found her genuinely disturbing. During her biosystems class, she overheard two Zentari students talking. "The humans' solutions are effective, but they reveal troubling thought patterns," one said. "Agreed. Its approaches suggest psychological traits that our species evolved beyond eons ago." Imagine if their entire species thinks this way. Impossible. No civilization could advance to space travel while retaining such primitive psychological patterns. But what if they did? Lisa kept taking notes and pretended not to hear them. But inside, she was beginning to understand something important. Her success was not making these advanced aliens respect humanity. It was making them afraid of what humans might be capable of. That night, she video called her parents again. "You sound different, sweetheart," her mother said. "More confident." "I'm learning a lot," Lisa replied. "About aliens, about space, about myself." "Are you making friends yet?" Lisa looked around her empty room and thought about the wide space that now surrounded her table in the dining hall. "Sort of," she said. "It's complicated." She was starting to realize that making friends might not be the point of her presence at the academy. Maybe she was there for a different reason entirely. Maybe she was there to show the galaxy something about humanity that they had never seen before. Something that was making them very, very nervous. By the third week, Lisa's corner table in the dining hall had become something like a quarantine zone. Students did not just avoid sitting with her anymore, they avoided the entire section of the room. What had started as social exclusion had transformed into something that looked very much like fear. Lisa noticed the change in small ways at first. Conversations that stopped abruptly when she walked past. Students who took longer routes through the hallways to avoid crossing her path. The way professors paused before calling on her in class, as if they were bracing themselves for whatever she might say. The breaking point came during her galactic history class with Professor Shan, an elderly Luxian whose glow had dimmed with age. The topic was the evolution of warfare in galactic civilization. For the past 1,000,000 years, Professor Shan explained, advanced species have moved beyond primitive conflict resolution. We have learned that cooperation and peaceful negotiation are superior to violence in all circumstances. Lisa raised her hand. The entire class turned to look at her with expressions she was learning to recognize as dread. "Yes, Student Martinez," Professor Shan said reluctantly. "What happens when you encounter a species that has not moved beyond primitive conflict resolution?" Lisa asked. The classroom went completely silent. Professor Shan's glow flickered uncertainly. "Such species are guided toward enlightenment through patient education and cultural exchange," he replied. "But what if they do not want to be guided?" Lisa pressed. "What if they prefer their primitive ways and see your peaceful nature as weakness? To be exploited?" Several students made uncomfortable sounds. A Zentari student in the front row spoke up. "No rational species would choose conflict over cooperation." Lisa looked around the room at all the frightened faces. "What if they are not rational by your standards? What if they are willing to accept losses and consequences that you find unthinkable?" Professor Shan's glow dimmed further. "Student Martinez, you seem to be describing a hypothetical species that would be," he paused, searching for words, "incompatible with galactic civilization." "Is that impossible?" Lisa asked. The question hung in the air like a physical thing. Lisa could see that she had voiced something that these advanced beings had never allowed themselves to consider. Their entire peaceful civilization was built on the assumption that all intelligent species would eventually choose cooperation over conflict. But what if that assumption was wrong? After class, Lisa overheard groups of students talking in hushed voices. "The human asks disturbing questions," a Molari was saying to its study group. "Its thought patterns are genuinely alien," a Luxian replied. "Not primitive, but fundamentally different from our evolved psychology." "I researched their species history," a Zentari added. "They achieved space travel while still engaged in global warfare. They developed nuclear weapons before they developed interstellar communication." "That should be impossible," the Molari said. "Yet here one of them sits in our academy, solving problems we cannot solve, using methods we would never consider." Lisa kept walking, but the conversations followed her. In the library, she heard students discussing human history with the kind of fascinated horror usually reserved for natural disasters. "They divide their own species into competing groups called nations," one was explaining. "These nations regularly engage in armed conflict with each other. While developing space technology? Another asked in disbelief. Apparently, they see conflict as normal, even beneficial in some circumstances. How did they avoid destroying themselves? Who says they have avoided it? This might be their first attempt at peaceful contact. Lisa found herself spending more time alone in her room, not because she was excluded, but because her presence seemed to cause genuine distress to other students. She had not meant to frighten anyone. She was just being herself, answering questions. Honestly, solving problems the way her mind worked naturally. But apparently, the way her mind worked naturally was terrifying to species that had spent millions of years evolving beyond human psychology. The situation reached a crisis point during her strategic studies class. Commander Hex had set up a complex simulation involving first contact with an unknown species. Students were divided into teams representing different galactic civilizations, and each team had to develop a contact protocol. Lisa was assigned to work alone, as usual. The other teams developed elaborate diplomatic approaches emphasizing peace, mutual benefit, and cultural exchange. Their plans were sophisticated, respectful, and designed to minimize any possibility of conflict. Lisa's approach was different. She assumed the unknown species might be hostile, deceptive, or have goals incompatible with galactic civilization. Her contact protocol included contingency plans for dealing with treachery, military aggression, and worst-case scenarios. When the teams presented their plans, the other students offered beautiful diplomatic frameworks based on trust and mutual understanding. Their presentations were elegant and optimistic. Lisa's presentation was pragmatic and dark. She had planned for betrayal, prepared for war, and designed her contact protocol to protect galactic civilization from a species that might want to destroy it. Commander Hex listened to all the presentations without comment. Then, he activated the simulation using a species profile that none of the students had seen before. One by one, the other team's diplomatic approaches were destroyed by a hostile alien civilization that saw their peaceful overtures as opportunities for exploitation. The simulated aliens used every offer of friendship as a chance to gather intelligence, infiltrate galactic society, and prepare for conquest. Only Lisa's paranoid, militaristic approach successfully protected galactic civilization from the threat. After the simulation ended, the classroom was completely silent. Commander Hex's crystal body flickered with patterns that Lisa had never seen before. "Student Martinez," he said finally, "how did you know?" "Know what?" Lisa replied. "How did you know to prepare for a species that would exploit peaceful intentions?" Lisa thought about the question. "I guess I assumed that not everyone in the universe would want the same things we want. Some species might see peace as weakness and cooperation as an opportunity for advantage." Commander Hex turned to address the entire class. The simulated species in this exercise was based on historical records from before the Great Peace. They represent the type of civilization that the galaxy has not encountered for over 1,000,000 years. He paused, looking directly at Lisa. Student Martinez designed her protocol as if she had personal experience with such civilizations. After class, Lisa found herself surrounded by empty space as other students hurried past her without making eye contact. She was not being shunned anymore. She was being avoided like a dangerous animal that might attack without warning. That evening, she sat alone in her room and tried to understand what was happening. She had come to the academy to learn about galactic civilization and prove that humans belonged among the stars. Instead, she seemed to be teaching the galaxy something about humans that they found deeply disturbing. Her success in solving problems was not earning respect. It was creating fear. Every assignment she completed, every question she asked, every solution she provided was evidence that human thinking was fundamentally different from the advanced species who ruled galactic civilization. And that difference was not being interpreted as interesting or valuable. It was being seen as threatening. Lisa looked out her window at the stars and wondered if she had made a terrible mistake by coming here. Maybe humans were not ready for galactic civilization, or maybe galactic civilization was not ready for humans, either. She was beginning to understand that her isolation was no longer about prejudice or misunderstanding. It was about fear. The advanced species of the galaxy were afraid of what humanity might represent. A reminder of psychological traits they thought they had evolved beyond, and a warning that the peaceful universe they had built might not be as stable as they believed. By week 3, no one dared sit near her because they were starting to realize that Lisa Martinez was not just a primitive student learning to be civilized. She was a representative of something that could challenge everything they thought they knew about intelligence, advancement, and the nature of civilized society itself. The academy-wide simulation was announced at the beginning of Lisa's 4th week. Professor Vex, Dr. Yilla, Commander Hex, and 3 other department heads had designed what they called the ultimate test of cooperative problem-solving. 50 students from different species would work together to solve a complex first-contact scenario. This exercise represents the pinnacle of galactic educational methodology, Professor Vex announced to the assembled students in the main auditorium. You will demonstrate the collaborative intelligence that has maintained peace across the galaxy for over 1 million years. Lisa sat in the back row as usual. The empty seats around her had become so normal that she barely noticed them anymore. What she did notice was the way the professors kept glancing in her direction, as if they were nervous about something. The scenario was presented on massive holographic displays. An unknown alien species had been discovered at the edge of galactic space. Their technology was advanced, but different from anything the galaxy had seen before. Initial contact attempts had been met with silence, but the alien ships had not attacked or retreated. They were simply waiting. Your mission, Commander Hex explained, is to establish peaceful contact and bring this species into galactic civilization. You have been divided into 10 mixed species teams of 5 students each. Lisa looked around for her team assignment and realized with a sinking feeling that her name was not on any of the team lists. She raised her hand. Professor, I do not see my assignment. Professor Vex's compound eyes focused on her. Student Martinez, you will be working as an independent consultant. All teams may request your input, but you are not assigned to any specific group. Lisa understood. They wanted to see what she would do, but they did not want her disruptive thinking to contaminate any of the official team approaches. For the next week, she watched the 10 teams develop their contact strategies. Each team followed the established galactic protocols: careful observation, respectful communication attempts, offers of cultural exchange, and patient demonstration of peaceful intentions. The approaches were sophisticated and elegant. Team 1, led by a Zentari student named Crix, developed a complex mathematical communication system designed to show the aliens that galactic civilization was highly advanced. Team 4 created an artistic presentation showcasing the beauty and diversity of galactic culture. Team 7 designed a comprehensive trade proposal offering beneficial economic relationships. Every approach was based on the assumption that the unknown aliens would want the same things that galactic civilization valued: peace, prosperity, knowledge, and cooperation. Lisa spent the week studying the alien behavior patterns in the simulation. While the other teams focused on how to communicate with the aliens, she focused on trying to understand what the aliens actually wanted. What she saw worried her. The alien ships were positioned in a defensive formation that could quickly become offensive. Their communication silence was not random, it was strategic. They were scanning galactic ships, gathering intelligence, and learning about galactic technology and tactics. Most disturbing of all, the alien fleet was growing. New ships arrived every day, but they remained hidden behind a planetary moon where the galactic observers could not easily detect them. Lisa tried to share her observations with several teams, but they dismissed her concerns. You are being overly suspicious, Crix told her. Not every species is motivated by conflict. Their behavior suggests caution, not hostility, the leader of Team 4 added. We must be patient and demonstrate our peaceful intentions. Lisa wanted to argue, but she had learned that her perspectives made other students uncomfortable. Instead, she developed her own contact protocol based on what she was actually observing rather than what the teams hoped to find. On the final day of the simulation, all 10 teams presented their contact strategies to the professors and a panel of advanced galactic diplomats who had arrived to observe the exercise. Team after team presented beautiful, optimistic approaches designed to welcome the unknown species into galactic civilization. Their plans were impressive, sophisticated, and completely wrong. When Lisa's turn came, she walked to the front of the auditorium with a simple tablet computer. The audience of students and professors watched her with expressions ranging from curiosity to anxiety. The unknown species is not interested in joining galactic civilization, she began. They are preparing to attack it. Shocked murmurs filled the auditorium. Several students made sounds of protest. Lisa activated her presentation, showing the tactical analysis she had been developing. Their fleet positioning is defensive, but can quickly transition to offensive. Their communication silence is designed to gather intelligence while revealing nothing about their capabilities. Most importantly, they are using the negotiation period to bring in additional ships. She highlighted sections of the simulation data that the other teams had ignored. They have been testing our defensive responses, measuring our reaction times, and studying our technology. This is not first contact. It is reconnaissance for invasion. The auditorium was completely silent now. Lisa continued her analysis, showing how every peaceful overture from the galactic teams had been used by the aliens to gather more intelligence about potential targets. My recommendation is immediate military mobilization, she concluded. Not to attack, but to demonstrate that galactic civilization is prepared to defend itself. Sometimes peace can only be maintained through strength. When she finished, the silence stretched on for nearly a minute. Finally, one of the visiting diplomats spoke. Student Martinez, your analysis suggests a level of deception and malicious intent that is incompatible with advanced intelligence. Why? Lisa asked. Intelligence does not automatically create morality. A species could be technologically advanced and still choose conquest over cooperation. That is a very disturbing worldview, the diplomat replied. But is it wrong? Professor Vex activated the simulation's final phase, revealing the true nature of the unknown alien species. The results were exactly what Lisa had predicted. The alien fleet launched a coordinated attack, using all the intelligence they had gathered during the peaceful contact attempts to devastating effect. Every single team's diplomatic approach failed catastrophically. The aliens used offered cultural exchanges to infiltrate galactic computer systems. They turned trade negotiations into opportunities for sabotage. They exploited every peaceful gesture as a tactical advantage. The simulation ended with galactic civilization suffering massive losses while the alien invaders established control over several key systems. In the stunned silence that followed, Commander Hex stood up. His crystal body was flickering with patterns that Lisa had never seen before. In 1,000 years of running first contact simulations, he announced, no student has ever correctly identified a hostile species using only observational data. He turned to look directly at Lisa. Student Martinez not only identified the threat, she developed the only strategy that could have prevented catastrophic losses. The auditorium remained silent. Lisa could feel hundreds of alien eyes staring at her. But the expressions were not admiration or respect. They were fear and something that might have been horror. Dr. Yilla spoke from the panel. How did you know? Lisa thought about the question. How could she explain that humans had spent their entire history dealing with species that could not be trusted? How could she make them understand that cooperation and peace were luxuries that had to be earned and defended? "I assumed they might be like us," she said finally. The effect of those words was immediate and electric. Students gasped, professors exchanged alarmed looks, and the visiting diplomats began whispering urgently among themselves. Lisa realized she had just confirmed their worst fears about humanity. She had revealed that humans were exactly the kind of species that galactic civilization had been lucky enough to avoid for 1,000,000 years: intelligent, advanced, and potentially hostile. As she walked back to her seat through a crowd that parted, like she was carrying a dangerous disease, Lisa understood that everything had changed. She was no longer a primitive student trying to prove herself worthy of galactic civilization. She was a representative of a species that galactic civilization was beginning to realize might be a threat to everything they had built. The Galactic Confederation observers arrived 3 days after the simulation. Lisa first noticed them during her morning engineering class, when Professor Vex was interrupted by 3 beings she had never seen before. They looked like tall, pale humanoids, but their eyes were completely silver, and they moved with an unsettling, fluid grace. "Class dismissed," Professor Vex announced abruptly. "Please complete reading assignments for next session." As students filed out, Lisa noticed that one of the observers was watching her specifically, not with curiosity, but with the kind of focused attention a scientist might give to a dangerous specimen. Over the next 2 days, the observers were everywhere. They sat in on classes, interviewed professors, and conducted private meetings with students. Lisa noticed that many of her classmates seemed nervous and kept glancing in her direction during these interviews. On the 3rd day, Lisa was called to report to the Academy's administrative center. She had never been there before, and the hallways felt different from the rest of the station. More formal, more serious, with an underlying sense of authority that made her nervous. The room she was led to was large and sterile, with a single table and several chairs. 2 of the observers were waiting for her, along with Professor Vex and Commander Hex. Everyone looked uncomfortable. "Please sit, Student Martinez," one of the observers said. Its voice was perfectly calm and completely emotionless. "I am Investigator Prime Zahn. This is Investigator Secondary Vel. We represent the Confederation Council for Species Assessment." Lisa sat down carefully. "Am I in trouble?" "That remains to be determined," Investigator Zahn replied. "We are here to assess the implications of your performance at this academy." "My performance?" Investigator Vel leaned forward slightly. "In 4 weeks, you have solved 3 problems that stumped advanced students for months or years. You have demonstrated tactical thinking that conflicts with established galactic principles. Most significantly, you have shown an ability to predict and understand hostile behavior that our civilization has not encountered for over 1,000,000 years. We need to understand," Investigator Zahn continued, "whether you represent an anomaly among your species or whether your capabilities are typical of human thinking." Lisa felt a chill run down her spine. "What difference does it make?" The 2 investigators exchanged a look that somehow conveyed volumes of information. "Student Martinez," Professor Vex interjected, "these investigators have spent the past 2 days reviewing your work and interviewing other Academy members. They have also been in communication with Earth." "With Earth?" Lisa's heart started beating faster. "Why?" Investigator Zahn activated a holographic display that showed what looked like surveillance footage from various locations on Earth. Lisa saw images of human cities, military bases, and what appeared to be weapons testing facilities. "Your species achieved faster-than-light travel while simultaneously maintaining over 200 separate military organizations," Investigator Zahn said. "You developed nuclear weapons before achieving global communication networks. You have been engaged in continuous warfare throughout your recorded history." The display changed to show statistical data about human society. Your species divides itself into competing groups based on geography, ideology, and resource access. These groups regularly engage in armed conflict. Yet somehow, you have also developed advanced technology and successfully made peaceful contact with galactic civilization. Investigator Vel took over. This combination of traits should be impossible. Either a species evolves beyond primitive competition, or it destroys itself before achieving advanced technology. Your species appears to have found a third option. Lisa stared at the data about her own species. Seeing human civilization through alien eyes was disturbing. She had grown up thinking of humanity as basically peaceful, with occasional conflicts. But the statistics made it clear that from a galactic perspective, humans were incredibly violent. "What are you trying to figure out?" she asked. "Whether your species represents a threat to galactic civilization," Investigator Zahn said bluntly. The words hung in the air like a physical blow. Lisa felt her world shifting around her. "We have never encountered a species like yours," Investigator Vel continued. "Your psychological profiles suggest a level of competitiveness, aggression, and strategic thinking that our civilization eliminated millions of years ago. Yet you have achieved technological advancement without destroying yourselves. The question," Investigator Zahn said, "is what happens when a species with your psychological traits gains access to galactic-level technology and resources?" Commander Hex spoke up. "Student Martinez, they want to know if humans will be content to join galactic civilization peacefully, or if you will attempt to conquer it." Lisa felt like she was drowning. "We just want to be part of the galaxy. We want to learn and contribute and be accepted." "That may be what you want," Investigator Vel replied. "But individual desires do not determine species behavior. We have studied your history. Humans consistently expand into new territories, compete for resources, and establish dominance over other groups. Why would your behavior change simply because you have encountered alien species?" Lisa tried to think of an answer, but the investigators were right. Human history was full of expansion, competition, and conquest. Even when humans tried to be peaceful, they often ended up in conflict anyway. Your performance at this academy suggests that human thinking provides significant advantages in problem-solving, strategic planning, and threat assessment, Investigator Zahn continued. "If your entire species thinks similarly, humans could become the dominant force in galactic civilization within a few generations." "Is that necessarily bad?" Lisa asked. The question created another uncomfortable silence. "Student Martinez," Professor Vex said carefully, "galactic civilization is based on cooperation, shared resources, and peaceful coexistence. Species that seek dominance threaten the foundation of our entire society." "But what if dominance is not the goal?" Lisa argued. "What if humans just want to succeed and be safe? Maybe our competitive nature could benefit everyone." Investigator Vel's silver eyes focused on her with laser intensity. "Your own academy performance demonstrates the problem. You did not simply solve problems, you solved them in ways that made other students feel inadequate and threatened. Your success created fear rather than admiration. That was not my intention." "Intention is irrelevant," Investigator Zahn said. "Effect is what matters. If humans consistently outperform other species, in critical areas the result will be human dominance whether you intend it or not." The investigators spent another hour questioning Lisa about human psychology, culture, and motivations. They wanted to understand how humans thought about competition, cooperation, and conflict. They asked about human history, human values, and human goals. With every answer Lisa gave, the investigators seemed to grow more concerned rather than reassured. Finally, Investigator Zahn stood up. "Student Martinez, you will continue your studies while we complete our assessment. However, you should understand that your presence here has raised questions that extend far beyond this academy." "What kind of questions?" Investigator Vel answered. "Questions about whether galactic civilization can safely coexist with a species like humanity." Questions about whether human integration should be limited, managed, or prevented entirely. As the investigators left, Lisa sat alone with Professor Vex and Commander Hex. Both professors looked deeply troubled. "Professor," Lisa said quietly, "are they talking about keeping humans out of galactic civilization?" Professor Vex's compound eyes flickered with uncertain patterns. "Student Martinez, they are talking about much more serious measures than exclusion." Lisa felt cold dread settling in her stomach. "What do you mean?" Commander Hex answered in a voice that was barely above a whisper. "They are discussing whether humanity represents an existential threat that must be eliminated before it can spread beyond Earth." Lisa stared at them in shock. She had come to the Academy to prove that humans deserved a place among the stars. Instead, she had accidentally demonstrated that humans might be too dangerous to be allowed to survive. The corner table where she had sat alone for weeks suddenly seemed like the least of her problems. The Confederation Council's decision came exactly 6 weeks after Lisa's arrival at the Academy. She was called to the same sterile conference room, but this time the space was crowded with beings she had never seen before. Representatives from dozens of species filled the room, their various forms creating a bizarre assembly of crystalline structures, floating lights, and shapes that defied easy description. At the center of the group sat an ancient Zentari whose crystal body had grown so large and complex that it required a specialized platform to support its weight. This was Elder Prime Sareth, the oldest being in galactic civilization and the final authority on matters of species integration. "Student Martinez," Elder Prime Sareth said, its voice creating harmonies that made the air itself seem to sing. "Your presence among us has created the greatest challenge our civilization has faced in over 1,000,000 years." Lisa looked around, the room at the assembled representatives. None of them seemed hostile, but they all watched her with the kind of careful attention usually reserved for dangerous explosives. "We have spent 6 weeks studying your species," Elder Prime Sareth continued. "We have analyzed your history, your psychology, your technological development, and your social structures. We have also carefully observed your performance at this academy." Investigator Zahn stood up from where he had been sitting with the other observers. "Our findings present us with an unprecedented situation. Humanity possesses psychological traits that should have prevented technological advancement, yet you have achieved faster-than-light travel. You maintain competitive, social structures that should have led to self-destruction, yet you have developed peaceful contact protocols. You demonstrate strategic thinking patterns that we eliminated from our own species millions of years ago, yet these patterns prove superior in many practical applications." Lisa felt her hands shaking. "What does that mean for humanity?" Elder Prime Sareth's crystalline body shifted, creating new patterns of reflected light. "It means that every assumption our civilization has made about intelligence, advancement, and social evolution may be incorrect." A Luxian representative floated forward, its glow dimming with what Lisa had learned to recognize as distress. "For 1,000,000 years, we have believed that true advancement required the elimination of competitive instincts, aggressive tendencies, and strategic deception. We believed that peace was only possible when all species had evolved beyond these primitive traits." "Your species challenges that belief," a Malari added, its slug-like form rippling with agitation. "You have achieved advancement while retaining traits we consider fundamentally incompatible with civilization." Lisa found her voice. "Are you going to stop humans from joining galactic civilization?" "The question," Elder Prime Sareth replied, "is whether galactic civilization can survive human integration." The room fell silent. Lisa could hear her own heartbeat echoing in her ears. However, Elder Prime Sareth continued, "We have also considered what galactic civilization might look like without the perspectives your species brings." The Elder activated a holographic display showing the simulation results from Lisa's classes. Your approaches to problem solving have revealed weaknesses in our thinking that we did not know existed. Your solutions work precisely because they ignore constraints that we have imposed upon ourselves. Commander Hex stepped forward from where he had been standing with the Academy professors. Student Martinez, your tactical analysis in the first contact simulation identified threats that our most experienced diplomats missed entirely. Your engineering solutions solved problems that had stumped our best minds for centuries. The Academy's social hierarchy, Professor Vex added, was designed to reflect natural order based on technological advancement and intellectual capacity. Your presence has demonstrated that this hierarchy may be fundamentally flawed. Dr. Yilla moved closer, her massive form undulating with what Lisa now recognized as excitement. Your biological engineering approaches were crude by our standards, but they were also more practical and reliable than our sophisticated solutions. Elder Prime Sareth's body created new crystalline formations as it spoke. We face a choice. Student Martinez, we can exclude humanity from galactic civilization to preserve our existing way of life, or we can accept that your species will fundamentally change everything we have built. What kind of change? Lisa asked. The end of our social hierarchies, Investigator Zahn replied. Species will no longer be ranked by technological advancement or evolutionary development. The concept of primitive and advanced will become meaningless. The end of our assumption that peace requires the elimination of competitive instincts, Investigator Vell added. We will have to learn to manage and channel those instincts rather than simply eliminating them. Most significantly, Elder Prime Sareth said, the end of our certainty that our way of thinking represents the pinnacle of intelligence and wisdom. Lisa looked around the room at the assembled representatives of galactic civilization. These beings had built a peaceful society that spanned thousands of worlds and had lasted for over 1,000,000 years. Now they were telling her that everything they had achieved might be based on incomplete understanding. What happens now? She asked. Elder Prime Sareth's body brightened, creating patterns of light that filled the entire room. Now, Student Martinez, you return to Earth, but not alone. The Elder gestured to the assembled representatives. Volunteer observers from every major species will accompany you to study human civilization directly. They will learn from your species just as you have learned from ours. The Academy's curriculum will be redesigned, Professor Vex announced, to include human approaches to problem-solving, strategic thinking, and social organization. New research programs will be established, Dr. Yilla added, to explore the integration of competitive and cooperative social structures. Commander Hex stepped forward. Military doctrine will be revised to account for the possibility of encountering species that have not evolved beyond strategic deception and aggressive expansion. Lisa felt overwhelmed. But what about the fear? What about the students who were afraid to sit near me? Elder Prime Sareth's harmonious voice filled the room. Fear, Student Martinez, is often the beginning of wisdom. Our students feared you because you represented something they did not understand. That fear forced them to question assumptions they had never examined. The corner table where you sat alone, Elder Prime Sareth continued, has become a symbol throughout the Academy, not of rejection, but of the courage required to challenge established thinking. Investigator Zahn activated another display showing Academy Harmony Point. Lisa saw that her corner table had been preserved exactly as she had left it, but now it was surrounded by new seating areas marked Alternative Perspective Zones. Students from all species now request assignments to these zones, Investigator Vell explained. They want to learn to think differently, to approach problems from perspectives they had never considered. Lisa realized that her isolation had not been punishment or prejudice. It had been quarantine, but not the kind she had feared. It had been a quarantine of ideas, and now those ideas were spreading throughout galactic civilization. The integration process will take generations, Elder Prime Sareth warned. There will be conflicts, misunderstandings, and difficulties we cannot yet imagine. Some species may never fully accept human perspectives. Some humans may never adapt to galactic society. But the alternative, the Elder continued, is stagnation. 1,000,000 years of peace have given us stability, but they have also made us complacent. Your species reminds us that the universe is not as safe or predictable as we had assumed. Lisa thought about her family back on Earth, about the farm where she had learned to fix broken machines and never give up on problems that seemed impossible. She thought about all the humans who would follow her into galactic civilization, bringing their stubborn competitiveness and their refusal to accept elegant solutions that did not actually work. "Elder Prime Sareth," she said, "what if we mess everything up?" The ancient being's crystal body created new formations that seemed to pulse with something like amusement. "Student Martinez, in 6 weeks, you have already changed more about our civilization than we had changed in the previous 1,000 years. We are far beyond worrying about whether you will mess things up. We are now concerned," Elder Prime Sareth concluded, "with whether we can adapt quickly enough to survive the changes you have already set in motion." As Lisa prepared to leave the academy and return to Earth, she realized that she had succeeded beyond her wildest dreams. She had proven that humans belonged among the stars. But more than that, she had proven that the stars needed humans just as much as humans needed the stars. The corner table where she had eaten alone for 6 weeks was no longer a symbol of isolation. It had become a symbol of the courage to think differently, to challenge assumptions, and to find new solutions to old problems. Lisa Martinez, farm girl from Texas, had come to the academy to learn about galactic civilization. Instead, she had taught galactic civilization something about itself that it had forgotten during 1,000,000 years of peaceful stagnation. The galaxy would never be the same. And that, she was beginning to understand, was exactly what it needed.